Hello everyone and welcome back. This is going to be part 4 of the blockout, I believe. Should probably check that before I start recording. But we're definitely making good progress here. We're in a pretty good place. I think we can probably wrap this up in 2 more parts, including this one, so just one more blockout after this. The luxury of you having all the files, you can just look and see how many there is. I don't really know how true that's going to be. But I think we can probably wrap this up in 2 more parts. So the next part of the blockout that I kind of wanted to tackle was all this kind of stuff up top. There seems to be quite a bit going on up there. Let's just find some better angles. Yeah, so kind of all these like cylindrical pieces, these weird contraptions on the side, everything that's sort of connecting it all together. We could definitely go through all of that in this part of the tutorial, which is good. And as I explained before, I like to break things down quite a bit. So I just used this 3D model that I brought up before. I spent a bit of time between recordings just sort of observing the different pieces. And even though they're not one-to-one with our references, it at least lets me know the different components of it. That's why I found it so useful. So I kind of just wanted to use it to break up the pieces and then do a really basic order of things. So I knew that we have this main ruler bar already done. So I thought, okay, let's just move front to back. That way everything sort of connects properly. We know that we're not really making pieces that rely on other pieces we haven't created yet. And that's where the ordering sort of comes in. So number one is this sort of metal bar, which is connected to a bolt. Just like this metal bar in the front is connected to a bolt. I didn't notice this, but we had another one that goes all the way down. So that's a really quick, simple one to make. We have this connection piece as number 2, which is connecting this metal bar, which is acting as another one of these rulers with in the back. So it's connecting that to a different metal bar that's stretching across. From there, we have these 2 other cylindrical shapes stretching all the way across. So like once again, this is kind of hidden. So this is why it's kind of important to observe it and just sort of draw on it and break it apart. I don't know about you guys, but it's just whenever I look at something like this from like a bird's eye view, it's just way too much going on. I kind of need to break it down. Maybe that's just me, but it definitely helps to digest all the stuff that's going on. So we have these 2 guys, which I just sort of like made one piece because we're just going to make one and duplicate it over. The 5th piece is kind of connecting all the pre-existing stuff we had. It's this kind of metal latch that goes through the whole thing and wraps up. So that'd be number 4, or number 5 rather. Number 6, we just have another one of these cylindrical pieces at the back. 7 is another cylindrical piece right above number 6. 8 is going to be this more large-scale piece that's connecting everything together. 9 is once again connecting things. Another cylindrical piece, another main piece, so on and so on. You guys get what I'm saying. Essentially, I just want to make it clear that it's okay to look at something and be like, holy shit, this is a lot. I need to break it down. So that's where this part came super handy, just for sort of getting the casing and understanding what our main piece is so we could fill it up. Once again, way too much visual information for me personally to just sort of look at and be like, okay, I get it. So I went ahead and numbered everything. So now that we know what we're making, like I said before, knowing what we were making is pretty much the biggest challenge. But now that we have that understood, we can just sort of go ahead and make it. So we're going to be starting with this cylindrical piece. Really, really basic stuff. And you should have this reference as well. So I'm just going to put it off screen for now. I'm just trying to find out a better reference for that cylindrical piece in the back. It is kind of one of those weirder camera angles. I might as well just put it back up front. Yeah, we don't have a ton of camera angles of how that one works, just because, yeah, it's kind of like shot over the shoulder. Like this is like perfectly blocking it here too. But this is a good reference actually for this next piece that we're going to be doing, so I'll keep this one in mind. I don't want to always completely rely on that 3D model that we found online, just because I know it's not 100% accurate. So it's safe to assume that since it's being bolted into the side here through these guys, that this is going to be the same size as this one. And even looking at this now after taking a break from it, I I kind of want to scale this up just a smidgen, because it seems like it's a bit bigger in the references. So that should be fine. And then of course we're gonna have to adjust that accordingly. But for now, as long as it's scaled up about, I think that big is about right. Cool, so I'm just gonna be duplicating this guy over. Control D, and then you know the drill. We're gonna be using our poke face tool to just sort of get a place we can snap to. Just centering the pivot to make sure our snapping is accurate. Snapping this guy in place, and the good thing about this is the length should already be good. It does seem like in the reference though, yeah, I believe that would be yeah, this is the front one and this is the back one. The back one, from the images I have seen and the model I was looking at, doesn't have any of those weird washers or changes in silhouette. I just really wish I could find a better picture of it. I guess we're not going to, but just for the sake of this, I'm going to go ahead and delete these. So I'm just growing the selection. Quickest way to merge these two would probably be select both rings and just, ooh, right, there's a bit of a difference. I'm actually just going to delete this piece then, grab these edges and vertex snap them to the back. Good. And do the same on this end. Get this edge loop. Vertex snap it back. Cool. Let's see. Okay, so we got that one done. Good. This second part is going to be the connector. I might actually want to go ahead and make this metal bar piece that's going across first, just so that way we have a proper measurement for this middle piece, because it seems to be kind of slotted in between the two. So let's go ahead and do that. This one seems interesting because if you look at the reference, it seems to be kind of floating, and then it connects into this piece, which we're going to be making later on. So let's just get it into position. And then once we get to this larger piece, we can then connect it and go from there. So making the actual shape of it should be pretty straightforward, like everything else. Pretty much just seems like a large rectangular piece with these kind of like horn shapes sticking out of it. So that should be a pretty simple one to do. Let's just scale this guy up. As far as length goes, it definitely seems to be going a little bit past this. So just for now, just for the sake of consistency, I'm going to snap it to the edge of this rectangular piece. So it's the same on both sides. I'm going to kind of get the shape a little bit more accurate. It seems to have some decent thickness to it, but it's a bit wider than that. Maybe even a bit thicker than that as well. Okay, cool. Let's roughly get this into shape, or into place now. It seems to be kind of level with like maybe like 2 o'clock on the bolt. So let's keep it at about there. And then it has a piece that sort of comes down like a 7, and there's some curvature to that as well. So I'm just trying to make sure, based on this reference, that I'm getting it correct. Yep, so it seems to come down a bit and curve in and then extrude out again. Pretty easy shape to make. So let's go ahead and do that. Control-Shift-X, so we get our cut tool. You should know the drill. Holding Control to get that out. I'm also going to be cutting directly in the middle so that we can get an even cut on both sides when I bevel it. Let's just select both of those guys and use the scale tool so we have a bit more control. Actually, this is another one of those things where it's like in the reference, it seems like it's almost level with this part here. So for now, I'm just going to snap it there on both sides. And to be honest, I might as well just cut this in half and mirror it when I'm done. So I'm going to go ahead and do just that. Let's cut that guy in half so we don't have to worry about a lot of the other parts. We can now go ahead and extrude this down. I'm just trying to keep my eye on the reference here. It seems like it extrudes down a little bit and then extrudes down again where it's a lot thicker. So let's try and mimic that. So a little bit of extrusion, and then it seems to go down to about here in the reference where it's like it has a decent amount of space before the hole, but it's not too high up or anything like that. From there, this part will eventually be connected with something else, so we'll leave it for now. Actually, I kind of want to... It seems like it's a bit thinner, so let's just make it like so. Don't want it to be too chunky. And then we can pull this part down a little bit. Just really trying to get a feel for the shape. It also seems like there's a bit of a curve to the whole thing, where this is sort of pulled out a little bit, and this has kind of come in a little bit. Maybe for the simplicity's sake, we can leave that to ZBrush. So we'll just have a bit of a curve like so. Just like that. Okay. And looking at it, I think this might actually be a bit too thick, having it sort of level. Mostly because this is actually extending past this wall, and we have this side level with it. So we should probably accommodate by scaling that in just a little bit. Cool. And then we sort of have this like horn shape sticking up out of it. Should be pretty easy. I think it would be easier to work with if we clean this up a little bit. So let's go ahead and do that. Nothing new here. Essentially, since we did all these extrusions, we have a lot of these sort of like blocks coming out of blocks, but we can just sort of snap some of these edges where they're not affecting the silhouette back to the closest edge. Can't really do it with this one. So that might be it, except for this guy. Oh, what's going on here? Okay, that should be easier to work with for now. The only time these sort of triangles cause issues is when we're trying to say bevel an edge that goes like this. Because then if we bevel it, it seemed to work this time, but sometimes I've seen Maya kind of, you know, give you some weird stuff happening right in the corner there. But anyways, we were going to be making that little raised part now, so let's go ahead and do that. Seems to be not too far off. It's only about like over here roughly. I could even say it's like close in level with this ruler. I do want to cross-reference that though with the actual typewriter we're making. Okay, this is a pretty good image of it here. It also seems that this is very thin. It also seems like on this version it actually wraps into this tool, which is pretty interesting. I'll have to look at that a bit more once we start to tackle this guy next. But it actually does look like it's coming right up to the end on this specific one. It's also interesting to note that it's only on one of the sides. Huh. I guess different models have different ways of handling it, but yeah, it definitely seems like this is only present on one side, and this side has a different set of tools going on. So that's okay, we can totally work with that. I guess that means we should probably mirror this over now, but also by looking at this, where was it? Yeah, I guess this smoothness is going to be fine. I was just hoping to sort of get a bit of a cleaner transition, but I honestly think, I don't think it's that bad. I think if we do something like that, like it's fine the way it is, and then even yeah, we're gonna get some issues here, of course, but just doing some basic cleanup. Okay, let's just not bevel the underneath part. It's kind of causing all of our problems. Okay, we got a bit more of a curved shape here, which is good. Now we're going to leave it the way that it is. Let's go ahead and merge these verts and these guys. And we can flip this now because this part is going to be good, because there's only one of those little like horn pieces just on the one side. So this takes care of the other side. I'm just putting the pivot in the middle, mirroring over X. It's good on both sides. Can go ahead and merge these guys. Control backspace to get rid of that middle line. And then let's go ahead and add that sort of curved hook piece just to this right hand side here. Add an edge loop in just so it's very contained. We could essentially make a hook come out and then connect the edges to all the corresponding corners, but if I just put an edge loop here, it's just way more easy to work with, and then we can clean it up later, because I'm not too concerned about the actual polygon layout right now, as long as it looks correct, as long as it's set up for ZBrush properly. So let's go ahead and find this reference. Seems to be the most accurate one. So it doesn't seem like it's taking up a ton of space, but we can Control E and offset in a little bit. Still might not even be thin enough. Can extrude up. It tapers off very, very quickly, it seems like. And it starts off centered, but then it starts curving. And more or less, I'm going to change the scale tool to component. So it's just based on the orientation of this face. Just make sure it's appropriately scaling up as we go. and just sort of massage the size of everything from here a little bit. Not too much I can really comment on with this. Other than definitely needs to be a little bit thicker at the top. So essentially this looks not the greatest at the moment, but it's one of those things where once we bring it into ZBrush and it starts to smooth it out for us, it'll be doing a much better job. We might even want to go ahead and bevel this just to make sure it's mostly on the right track. I don't want to just sort of like have blind faith that ZBrush is going to fix everything for us. So if we Control B and bevel it, seems like it's mostly there. I think I'm concerned about this top piece not being round. So that definitely helps. And then we can scale it a little bit more. The bottom might be a little obtuse, to be honest. And then I want to work a little bit better on this tapering here. Okay, so let's try and bevel that again and see the results we get. Control B. Just not gonna like it because we have these guys set up. Gonna have to clean that up in a second. It's just a rough view. But yeah, so that pretty much says like when we do smooth it, like this is going to be giving us the shape that we want, which is good. Let's go ahead and clean this up. It's going to select this face, shift right click, merge faces to center. So we've taken care of that part. I do kind of want to just make the curve a little bit more noticeable. And that'll do it for that. Cool. So that's that piece. Let's see what we had next. I think it was the connection here. So what's cool about this is it kind of, yeah, it looks like it's one metal piece that's completely kind of like not necessarily welded together, but merged together into one shape. Let's see. Yeah, this one's totally different. This is kind of like a slider, more like the front piece, which is cool. But yeah, even here it kind of looks like it's welded on. Yeah, it definitely seems like that's the general theme, that it's just kind of like one thin piece wraps around here. So we can go ahead and do that. This is kind of the time where I'd go and I'd reference this 3D model and be like, okay, so from this I assumed just based on looking at it that it was sliding, but it doesn't seem to be the case. It seems to kind of be like some piece that's stuck between the bar and here, as we established before. But just based on how these smoothing groups are done, I just assumed that it was a different piece. But if it's welded together, that is honestly way more interesting in my opinion. So let's go ahead and do that. I also wanted to address the fact that this kind of seems to have like a lip to it. So So we can go ahead and add that in really quickly. Just going to add a edge loop here. Select these faces, and I'm just going to slightly extrude them out, just a little bit. I might even want to extrude them up a little bit at the same time. Just so that when it's beveled, it's not going to make that much of a difference, but we're going to see some pretty cool like lipping where it smooths over. But since we're going to be merging this with a different shape, let's go ahead and give that a really quick cleanup. Such a long shape, so it's interesting to work with something like this. So let's snap that up, and that might be all we really have to do. Yep, okay. Merge those guys, cool. And let's start working on that middle piece. So I'm just going to hit print screen, copy that over. I have a program called Lightshot. When you hit print screen, it gives you way more control over what you're doing. You can select certain areas, you can mask out certain areas, you can draw over your stuff, and then I can just copy and paste it directly here, which is super useful. It's going to save you a lot of time if you're doing a lot of screen grabs. Like you would be for a project like this. So I'm just going to keep this to the side just so I have more room to work within Maya. But at the same time, I want to grab a closer screen grab here. Interesting. Okay, I have PureF set to always be on top, which is Control-Shift-A. So I think that was messing up my screenshot. So let me try that again. Okay, that's working pretty good. Okay, cool. It seems like there's something inside of there, but I'm going to have to cross-reference to see exactly what's going on. It doesn't seem super clear, to be honest. That's why I kind of like this style a little bit more. It kind of might just be a small opening. The one that we're doing here kind of seems that it's not as prominent, which like I'm totally cool with. Oh, this is actually a really good shot of it. I'm gonna print screen this again. It kind of looks like there's just a small disc in there, which is cool for material breakup, and we can easily do that with a normal, and then this would be a material ID where we can separate it. So that's pretty cool. Let's slap that into our reference area. And yeah, let's go ahead and start making this guy. So I'm going to put this to the side again. Scale-wise, it doesn't seem like it's taking up that much space. So let's start with a cylinder. Create polygon primitive cylinder. Rotate that guy over. It should be 20 segments by default, I believe. Which I'm just gonna bump it up to 24. Yeah, okay, that should be fine. So it's already directly in the center. It's mostly just a scale thing at this point, so I'm just sort of looking at my references and seeing how big this guy is. I'm even going to opt to go into my front view, just so I have a better idea as to how big this guy actually is. Going to Scale him down. Honestly, only seems about this big because it kind of looks like it's not a full circle. It goes about half the way and then it sort of compresses into a squared off shape at the bottom. So I'm going to keep it at that for now. And like I said, it changes shape and it seems to do that at about the halfway point. So for now, let's just go ahead and delete the bottom half. Let's scale this in a little bit. And let's line everything up. So I'm going to put our pivot to the bottom. I think it was already there, but oh well. And let's line it up here. And snap it so it's directly touching. Okay, so what we know about this guy is that he slots into this bar in front of it. So that extrudes down, connects there. This is going to do a couple things for us, which is pretty useful. It's going to let us kind of know right away if our spacing on everything is doing good, now that we're starting to connect things. One thing I will say is even though we have this lip, I think it might be easier if I take all these faces on the back and actually line them up with before the lip, so we get a better transition between everything. And then this front, these faces here, it seems like there's some decent amount of space between these two, and then at the bottom it sort of levels out a bit more. So let's go ahead and take this bottom, extrude it down. And it seems to be going just under the bar. We also have to extrude this forward. So this is pretty interesting because, like I said, it's kind of giving us our first taste as to if our spacing on things are good. Because now we actually have parts that are interacting with one another. So I'm assuming we're going to have to wiggle some things around. I'm actually going to delete these. So I have a bit more flexibility with how all this works. Because realistically, I only want this bottom part to be connecting about here before it transitions up. I'm also starting to think I could probably lower this. Just something more like that. Just based on how this reference is looking. It's looking a bit more appropriate. I'm just trying to gauge if this is the right size, because I'm thinking it might be a tad too big. Let's center our pivot and just scale on these two axes. You can then bring it down so that this part is centered once again. It seems like it's mostly like that. I'm just trying to make sure that this bottom part is the appropriate amount of space. So something like that could be fine. We could also raise this, but that would mean we'd also have to raise this. And as you can see, that could start to get pretty complicated. I don't mind having this be a little bit chunkier. That seems to be fine with me. So let's go ahead and work on having this sort of wrap up. It seems like it wraps up and connects to the back of this, because it does definitely seem like it's one piece. I do actually want to go ahead and extrude this and round it out though. It seems like it sort of like smooths out and then smooths around. So let's go ahead and do that. Before anything though, I think we've done enough work to probably warrant a save, so let's go ahead and do that. All right, let's just go ahead and select these back faces. Unhide all of that. We can just pull this back. I'm gonna just snap it back here. And now all we have to do is sort of wrap this around and connect it, and then bevel it out. So let's go ahead and do that. It should be pretty straightforward. Shift selecting both of those, shift right click, shift right click bridge, hit G so we do it on both sides, and then we can just, right, okay, we seem to have made some weird geometry. So we're just going to clean this up like before, where this is just one big edge that also happens to be resting on this small edge. To fix that, we just got to cut into the big edge, put that vertice onto the small edge, then when we merge them, it'll force it to be two separate edges. You can just do that on both sides. Pretty quick. Whoa, something's going on. Shift right click merge, merge vertices, okay. Select the holes, shift right click and fill hole. G, of course, to duplicate last command. So now we have that piece, we just got to round it out. Control B. I don't want these guys selected, I just want it to be the rounded back of the cylinder. Hit Control B. Just trying to mimic this shape here. Okay, not bad. And then this bottom part seems to just kind of be, yeah, connected like that. So let's actually take a better look at this, just because I think this might be giving us some issues. Maybe not. I do want to get rid of this middle edge. It's just unnecessary, going to give us some problems. So now that we have the main gist of our shape, I do need to give this some breathing room here, actually. Either that or move this down just a smidgen. I also want to, yeah, in general, just give this some more room to breathe. So I'm going to be taking this face and just pushing it back a little bit. Same with this guy. Just so that this has some more breathing room. It was just getting a little bit too tight and all there. So that's looking pretty good. Now I want to combine these two so that they're the same mesh. And the reason I'm doing that is so that when we bring it into ZBrush, these edges here, they actually bevel and smooth together and look like one sort of unison piece, kind of like this, where like the metal is curved over, you have this kind of cool transition between it all. I'm definitely going to want to keep that. So let's go ahead and isolate these two. We could do it with a Boolean, but I know that's going to give us some weird issues here. Definitely some weird issues here. Let's just save and give it a shot. So let's save because this is a risky Boolean. And then, yep. Okay, cool. So go back to our Bool manager. Select the two pieces. We're doing a union this time, which is just going to put the two of them together and make it into one mesh rather than cut anything out of something else. New Boolean operation. Clean up, delete history and base objects. And now, say we select one of these verts, like it's actually connected. and it's hollowed out in the middle where the geometry would normally be overlapping. The problem with this is it usually does a pretty terrible job of making your meshes clean and usable. Non-manifold geometry is something that always pops up, which gives you a lot of trouble when you do things like UVing. You'll open up the UV editor and it says, oh, you can't unfold because you have non-manifold geometry. A lot of that stems back to when you're doing your Boolean operations. Cleaning this stuff up isn't going to be too hard. Like, we can just do that. For the sake of this, I'll save that for later because we don't really need to worry about it. I'm mostly worried about stuff like this, where it didn't really seem to cut properly because the faces were level with one another. We have like hidden faces under here. So that's going to be an issue. So that's kind of the only thing we really have to clean up. I'm just going to add in some slices here so that I can delete this face and start to do some manual repairs. So probably the quickest way to do this is just selecting all these edges here and then extruding them out. From here we can just merge it to these edges and delete the edges, and then we know that there's no hidden faces under there because we went ahead and deleted it. So let's just merge these guys. Cool. Do the same on the other side. And it kind of looks like the bottom's fine. So that's always good. But it's definitely, whenever you're doing a Boolean, good to double check if you're doing anything that's kind of destructive like this. Or maybe destructive isn't the best word, but like things that are gonna cause hidden faces and stuff like that. That's a pain to go back and find, because usually they're always tracked back to Booleans anyways, so you might as well double check them and take care of them as you go. Cool. So that's going to take care of that. We can now even select these and control backface to delete them. And now that we know for certain that these are actually the same face, these are not connected to anything, so we're gonna have to fix that in a second. In fact, because of that, let's actually bring back these edges, and we can just sort of use these edges to fix these guys up. So just selecting the two verts. And it doesn't seem to really want me to connect them. I wonder if I use the cut tool if I can manually do it. Yeah, so that's definitely going to be one way to do it. Merge those vertices. Yeah, we're going to have to use the cut tool for this. Just not really doing anything new here. I'm just sort of taking the cut tool, running it over this long edge that's overlapping so that I can merge it and make sure that these edges are actually all part of the same thing, because right now they're not. Because this will give us some troubles later on. Not so much in ZBrush, but like later on when we're retopologizing everything. Okay. So that's halfway done. Definitely not the most exciting part of all of this, but I don't know, it's just part of the way that all this is done. It can't all just be, you know, the super cool stuff. Just gotta manually go through and do all this. Whew. Okay, so that should take care of that. The front should be good though, based on everything I've seen. Yep. The only thing I'm kind of concerned about right now is this part. I'd rather have it just go straight in. So let's have it do just that. Essentially, in order to do that, I just need to snap this vertex to where I want it to be on the x-axis as far as it being straight. Same with the y-axis, and then I can just snap all of these over there accordingly. Yep, and then we can just go ahead and merge that. Seem to have some weird shading, but I think that's because we just have to close this off. And then maybe even just do like an auto smooth. Yep, okay, cool. So that's this part. For the most part, it seems that there's like a metal casing on the front. So we can go ahead and address that. Let's just select these front faces, and I'm actually going to pull it back a little bit just so it has a little bit more room for that metal. I also kind of like having it be given a bit more breathing room in general. I think everything was definitely getting a bit too claustrophobic up there. But it has this lip here, as you can see when it changes materials. We can create that in ZBrush pretty easily, just because when we smooth things, it's automatically going to chamfer them. I'll actually do a quick little demonstration right now. So let me just create 2 cylinders just as an example, just because it might be a little bit confusing if I don't explain this right now. But let's say we have these 2 cylinders directly on top of each other, and they're representing this black part and this silver part. So even though if I turn wireframe off, they look like they're the exact same, when we bring them into ZBrush and we start to bevel things out a little bit, like let's go ahead and grab both of these and hit Control B, you're going to notice it creates this kind of like crevice in the middle. So it's 2 different things that look the exact same when they're on top of each other in their low poly / blockout mode. When we bevel them, it's going to be much more clear that there's a seam, and it's going to kind of create that sort of rim lip look, which is great. So let's delete that, just so you guys aren't confused as to why I'm setting things up the way that I am. So let's actually select these faces again. Gross selection isn't really the best option on a shape like this anymore. But I even want to pull it back a little bit further. I might even pull it back there actually, so it snaps and overlaps there. But that's going to mean, of course, that we're going to have to merge our vertices. Seems like there's some weird shading. But a auto smooth seems to be taking care of most things for us, which is good. Anyways, just to sort of get that metallic face over top, that's pretty quick and easy. I'm just going to be taking these faces using our good pal in the Smart Mesh tools, the Smart Duplicate Face. Now we have a direct copy of that. I'm going to pull it out a little bit, select the faces, and extrude it out to the thickness of this metal, which doesn't seem to be that thick at all. It's about that much. And then just snap it back here. One thing I really like to do when kind of doing this kind of stuff and setting up, say, like things specifically for ZBrush that don't look very clear inside of Maya, is I just like to assign it a different material. So I'd go and like just paint it red so I can just remember really quickly, oh, this is two different pieces. That's why this guy comes really quickly, or really in handy when I need it quickly, or just want to change the material. I did show you guys before though, if you want to make a material, assign favorite material, Lambert or Blinn or whatever you want to use. And then in the side here, you're gonna have your color settings. But that's just a quick way to do that. Looking at this guy, we definitely have some more stuff to set up here. There was another good image. It was this guy here of what exactly is happening on the inside. So there's definitely a cutout taking place, which should be simple enough. And just because of the cutout, I kind of actually want to pull this out a little bit more. I think the way I'll have it set up is that this whole cutout cuts through this whole thin part, and then behind it, between these two different materials, there's going to be this rounded circular piece. So I just wanted to have enough room for a decent sized cut. So we can leave it like that. To cut it out, we can just use a Boolean. Pretty simple. I just want to make sure I'm getting the shape right. It just kind of looks like a rounded square, which is pretty easy. Let's just isolate this guy. Create polygon primitives cube. Just vertex snap that guy to the middle. Just trying to mimic the size of it. There seems to be a decent amount of room on either side. So it's kind of something like that. And then from there, Control B to bevel. I'm not too worried about polygon counts on this because I know that this is all going to be baked down information. So I kind of just want it to be smooth more than anything else. And of course the bottom I'm just going to sort of leave fully cut off because this is only a semicircle anyways. So I'm happy with that. That's definitely enough edges to give us a proper cut or a proper smoothing once we bring it into ZBrush. So yeah, typical Boolean stuff. I'm going to make sure it's back on difference. Select what we're cutting from, shift select what we're cutting with, new Boolean operation. And that's that. Delete history and base objects, easy peas. And we got our shape again. I kind of do think it might look like it's a little bit too big. So I'm tempted to just sort of grab these edges. Seems like I selected way more somehow. But just to check, I'm gonna move them. Yeah, I just kind of want to scale it in a little bit. So that's pretty much looking the exact same. We're gonna have to close off these faces though. For the sake of time, I'm just gonna delete half. Some weird stuff going on here. Typical like Boolean weirdness. Same with all of this. Like this stuff's terrible, honestly. Where you have like where it cuts right beside another edge. So just make sure you go ahead and merge those. Just gonna clean this up because it's gonna be a headache to work with if we don't. These are also all inverted faces that we talked about in our last chapter, so I'm just going to reverse those so it's all red. And now we can finally get back to what we were intending to do in the first place, which is just bridging these guys over. Of course, G is to repeat our last command. Cool. We know we want this to be symmetrical, so we can put our pivot right in the middle. Mirror over X. Merge our verts. I can't remember if I just closed this off or not. No, we're good. Yeah, okay, cool. So we got that piece there. Now we have to address this kind of semicircle in the middle. I mean, that one seems pretty easy to do. It's going to be mostly the material that sort of gives it any information, really. But once again, this is a very similar case to what we were cutting with. This is something that's not actually going to ever be real geometry in the final model because it's such a small detail. It's not affecting the silhouette. We can bake it down to a normal, give it a different color with an ID map. And because of so, I'm not concerned at all with the geometry count on this. So I'm just going to crank it up. It seems our gizmo's kind of off. It's on custom for some reason. Let's set it back to world. Cool. Go back to our channel box so we can open up our polygon settings. Make this like 40 subdivisions. Just like everything else so far, we're only going to really need half of this guy, it seems like. Then I'm going to cap this off at the bottom. The reason I keep doing that is because when we bring it into ZBrush, it doesn't really like open faces. What it does is it automatically fills a hole into it. And I'd rather have more control over that myself, just in case it decides to do anything weird. And it doesn't normally do that. Like ZBrush is pretty damn good at knowing what you kind of want out of all of that, but just in case. So now let's kind of fit this in here. I'm going to select one of these back faces, shift period to grow selection, and then deselect everything but those back faces so that we can snap it. So it's flush with the back. Do the same on the front. And then from here, what I'm going to want to do is move my gizmo to the center and just kind of scale it like so. I'm starting to realize it's not as visible. I kind of want it to be more like this, so it's matching the reference. So I'm actually going to pull it up like so, and I'm curious to see if I can mirror it at the bottom. So let's freeze transformations, lead history, mirror on Y. We're still going to want to give it a little bit of space just based on the reference. It doesn't seem like it's totally flush with the top. But I'm going to want to cut off the bottom. I also am starting to notice that it might be a better idea to have this set in a little bit. Oh, right, I'm going to have to merge vertices. So just selecting those faces on the front, I'm just going to set it in a little bit. So when we bake it down, it's not all totally flush, like there's some actual height variation. Okay, so that seems to be hugging it pretty good. It's reading the same from a distance. One thing I will say about this red is it kind of seems like it curves up and then goes down a little bit. I know this is mostly the metal that's hooking it off of it, but it kind of even seems like here there's like this kind of shape, and this is just me beveling it. And once again, I'm not worried about doing that because I know I'm going to bake it down later, so that seems to be fine. Just go ahead and merge these guys. Yeah, so that we have like a bit of a tab for this arrow to sort of jut out of and land back on there. Okay, cool. So, right, I'm going to want this to be cut off at the bottom. So I'm going to select these two guys. Actually, I'm going to select them in our front view. Of course, just pressing spacebar to switch between views. And now we can go into our cut tool. And we could do this with a Boolean, but like this is just quicker. I'm just using the cut, clicking and holding shift to slice across. Just trying to get it as level as possible with this line here. And then I can just, of course, grab these faces and just hit delete. So clearly this isn't going to be perfect, but we can then take these verts, snap them so it's closed off properly, merge everything, and then just to make sure it's perfect, we can grab these verts and snap them here. So now they should be perfectly flush. Fill that guy back up. And there we go. That shape is done. It's also set up in a way where our smoothing is going to work perfectly in ZBrush. This is going to have good bevels around here. We're going to have a nice lip around here. We're going to have a beveled separation between these two different material types. So that's all looking pretty good. Honestly, this piece took a lot longer than I thought it was going to. So remember at the start when I said that we were going to wrap this all up in 2 parts? Maybe not, because we were still technically only have done 3 of these parts. Interesting. This is going to take longer than I thought, but that's okay. No point rushing. We do have to make this sort of arrow thing sticking out now. Definitely starting to realize that I probably over beveled this. If we kept it as a rectangle, it probably would have been a lot easier to work with. So let's go ahead and undo that. I do like this transition, but I want this bottom to be a rectangle just for us to extrude from, because the beveling is going to take care of itself. I'm just grabbing these edges and lining them up horizontally so that I can just drag them down. Right, okay. So my logic with what I just did there is now I can take this and snap it over. And now this shape should be a perfect rectangle, which I can extrude from to make this arrow shape. Before, when it was rounded, it was just going to be way too many edges to work with. Like, we don't need to concern ourselves with any of that. And I know we don't really have to clean this up back here, but I hate seeing this kind of geometry. Like, this is not going to make any difference at all. I just have to clean it up. It's a habit of mine. Cool, so now we have this. We can sort of unhide everything and drag it out to make an arrow. I think we should probably save first before anything. Cool, let's go ahead and make this guy. Let's look at our actual reference. It just kind of seems to be a pretty stiff looking arrow shape sticking out. Very, very similar to this down here. So we'll have to make sure when we're actually bringing it into ZBrush that they have the sort of same size and shape language, since they're probably designed to be the exact same. I'm just extruding this out. Excuse me. And extruding it out once again. Rotating. Thickness definitely seems to be like off, so I kind of want to scale this in. I guess we can't really scale in these guys back here. Do something like that. These edges are going to get pretty annoying, so I'm going to delete those. Same with this. Control backspace, we really don't need them. And this kind of looks a little too breakable, I guess. So I'm just going to have it more like so, and then we already know the technique for the arrow. Drag out a little piece. Can then just extrude with a Control E. Nothing too crazy. But then just merge these edges back in. Merge those vertices. And then of course we're gonna have to like fudge the distances on everything a little bit. So we can just of course go to our move tool, change this to component, pull this guy back a little bit, kind of even want to scale him in, which means we're gonna have to scale this guy in. But that's more or less the arrow. Just have to more or less make sure that the graphics match with it, make sure that the lines are level with this, but like it should be fine the way that it is. It's just me being kind of a bit of a perfectionist with all this now. And then these little parts, like we can always adjust even after the material's put on it, 'cause they're so tiny. We're not going to see any sort of distortion or anything like that. Just going to make them a bit chunkier. And that should probably do it for that. Actually, now that I look at it, in the reference, this definitely needs to be thinner. Like it's like a little piece of metal that looks like it could be snapped off. It's kind of like a pop tab thickness. Cool. Okay, that'll do it for that right there. Let's keep looking, because we have the internals. The only thing we're missing is like the bolts on either side. So screw it, might as well just slap in a placeholder on that. I'm going to be using this lovely toolkit. Can't speak highly enough of it. Seems like they're very obtusely placed, like they're very wide out. Like so. Move the pivot to the center, freeze transformations, delete history, and flip it on X. And there's that. Cool. So that's that piece there. Let me just see what we're doing on time. Hour and 10 minutes. Okay. Let's see. So this next part is these two cylinders with this connection piece. Right. I think I'm going to stop it here just because the next couple of pieces go very tightly together, kind of like the pieces we did today. I'll work with one another. It's very similar for the next one, so I'm going to leave it here. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this part. I will see you in the next one. But realistically, we're getting through this pretty quickly, and I think I think we can get through the rest of the top stuff in the next part, and then that will just leave the keys and all that stuff. So after this part, 2 or 3 more parts, or you can just check the folder because you guys know. I'm kind of jealous about that. You guys already know what the final product looks like if you bought this or I'm checking this out. So yeah, either way, it's not going to be too much longer. Thanks for watching this one, and I'll see you guys in the next part.